I'll resume recording. Welcome everyone. Thank you very much for joining us to our webinar on how to understand your GAPS report. Before we start, I will do a little bit of housekeeping remarks, some checks. And the first one is to ask you to please add in your name, which city or organization you are representing. Please keep yourself muted when others are speaking. We have interpretation to Spanish, which you find in this little globe in your Zoom menu. So, tenemos interpretación a español. Nuevamente, para las personas que se han unido en estos últimos minutos, pueden acceder a
For
ella
those who have
dentro del
just
teclado
joined, just a reminder that we have interpretation available. This is the icon you should look for in your Zoom menu because this webinar is going to be held in English.
So to continue in English, as the webinar will happen in English, please use the chat to introduce yourselves, ask questions, exchange information among you. And we are very, very happy to have you all here. It's cities from all around the world that we have in this webinar. So we're very happy to welcome our LAC cities, but also our cities from Europe, from Africa, and from the US and Canada. So the ones that we are here today for this webinar is myself, Andrea Cantillo. I'm part of the WWF OPCC global team. But the ones that you will be listening more, the ones that have the spotlight today is Gara and Bjorn. Gara is also part of the WWF OPCC global team. And Bjorn from Sustainable Advantage, he is a senior climate advisor to WWF. What we aim to have today, our purpose is to offer you guidance on how to interpret your GAPS report and how to best use it in your amendment period. The idea is to show you why a GAPS report, why is it useful to engage with it, and also have a view of going over it. But we also really much want to give the space to you to ask questions and for us to answer them as well. We're recording the session. We will send it to you. So just a little bit of a brief introduction from my side. As you know, the One Planet City Challenge has a little bit of 5 stages, general stages. And right now we are in the first 2. The first one started in the 3rd of April and concluded in the 31st of August when you were reporting your climate work at CDP E-Clay Track. And then we went into the evaluation phase where the GAPS report creation started when we were evaluating what you had reported. And during this evaluation period, you have the opportunity to amend what you have reported in the CDP E-Clay Track. And that opportunity goes until the 31st of October, so from today until the end of the month. And the idea, the idea of this webinar is that we go more in detail on what the GAPS report is and then how to use it in your amendment period. But then also part of the evaluation stage of the OPCC is for us to deliver you, to give you feedback on your climate work, and that would happen through the strategic feedback report in the first quarter of 2024. I'm not going to go in full details around that one because I will leave the floor for speaking more about the GAP report this time around, and I know that my colleagues will also go into that. So maybe to answer some questions first, why engage with the GAPS report? I'll invite Bjorn to answer some questions from my side, but maybe Bjorn, you want to introduce yourself a little bit before we go into those.
All right. Thank you very much, Andrea, and very nice to see all of you here today. My background, just as a small introduction, I have been working for the city of Uppsala in Sweden and the city of Stockholm in Uppsala for about 20-25 years. So with that experience and participating 3 times for the City of Uppsala in the One Planet City Challenge, and also becoming a national and global winner. With that experience, I'm here to try to support all of the cities and also support WWF in this challenge, in this city climate challenge. So the question, Andrea, was why this amendment period? Yeah,
yes.
I think because the whole idea of this process of the challenge is several steps. So now you have made one effort up until the 31st of August, and now you get a feedback. You get a check on how is that work progressed so far, and with the gap report you will be able to add, correct, improve, or anything that you like to do in order to get in the end more feedback back. The strategic feedback report that you will receive in February, the more you put in, the more you get back. So it becomes more valuable for you, the strategic feedback report, if you are able to add on in your reporting. And I know from other cities that some just had time to do something, and now it's the time to have a second round on your report. Maybe you have reflected and come up with some new ideas, or you have taken recent decisions on step forwards that you would like to complement in your reporting. So this is a good way to understand where you can improve your reporting. And Gara will tell you all about that, and we speak more about that during the webinar.
Great. Thank you, Björn. I hope I didn't cut you.
No.
But if we go into the next question, does this year amendment period vary from that of the previous years?
Yes, it does. So for you newcomers, this is not a question, but for cities who has reported and participated in the One Planet City Challenge, one or several rounds previously, this will be new. And how the gap report, it is now a gap report. It is not any longer what it was before, so it's totally new. And actually what WWF is presenting to you is the details of the assessment that WWF is doing and using for the strategic feedback report. So and this is something that many cities has been asking for. Can we see more of the details so that we better understand how we can improve reporting and improve our climate work by that? And here it is. And Gara will tell you all about it.
Awesome. Thank you, Björn. So indeed, to move on to Gara, our next question to answer is how to read and interpret your GAPS report to make the most out of the amendment period. And I know, Gara, you have different slides to take us through that, so I give you the word.
Super. Thank you so much, Andrea and Björn, for that introduction. And as has been said in the following slides, I will present the structure of the GAPS report, as well as what you should be paying attention to get the most out of this report. So if you could go to the next slide, please. Before we dive into the details of it, I know I am using the same slide that Andrea had, but I just wanted to emphasize again that we are in those first two steps of the OPCC, of the One Planet City Challenge, which includes the reporting stage and the evaluation stage. And why do we do this assessment? There are two main reasons. The first one is to identify opportunities for improvement in cities' climate journey. So this includes both in terms of vision, which represents a city's commitment and ability to drive change, as well as their impact, which represents the reduction potential of a city's current climate action. So again, the first why, the first answer to that why is to identify opportunities for improvement. And then the second reason why we do this assessment is to identify front runners and to share knowledge, which is partly what we are doing here. And now to how we do that assessment, if you could go to the next slide, please, Andrea. So every organization or initiative has their own way of making these assessments about cities' reported data. And here in the OPCC, we use our own assessment framework. And if you want to learn all of the details about the theory behind it and how it works, you are welcome to check out our technical document, which is, you can find it in the panda.org/OPCC at the information for cities. So if you want to know the background story, you can head over to there. And then if we can go to the next slide, and this is the last one before we dive into the GAPS reports. There are two main deliverables that we have for OPCC participants. As Bjorn said, in the past, we were only sharing the strategic feedback reports, but we had a lot of feedback from participating cities that it would be great to have sort of a slightly different type of feedback, which is how the GAPS report was born. So this is the first year that we have the GAPS report, and it mainly includes the results of the evaluation that we conduct. Whereas the strategic feedback report, it focuses more on the recommendations that we have for improving cities' climate journey from the design stage to the implementation stage. But we won't focus on that, on the strategic feedback report in this session. That will be available in the first quarter of 2024. So in this session, we're going to go into the GAPS report. Now, if we can go to the next slide, as I hope you have the report with you, or that you have had a chance to have a quick browse through it, or maybe some of you have been looking more closely. But regardless, there are two main sections in this report, which are the completeness evaluation and the quality evaluation. The completeness section is, it evaluates your submission vis-a-vis the minimum evaluation criteria in the OPCC. So you can use this section, the scorecards or tables that are available in the completeness evaluation. You can use them to identify areas of reporting that may be in need of improvement and to ensure that you have a more comprehensive submission. And then the quality evaluation, it contains the results of the data quality checks, which can allow you to identify any inconsistencies in relevant OPCC data entries, and thus allowing you to correct any erroneous or unintentional data that you submitted. And just a quick note here is that the data that or information that we used for making these GAPS reports are the data that was submitted by the 31st of August to CDP ICLEI-TRAC. So if you have done any amendments after the 31st of August, they will not be included in the GAPS reports that you are seeing. So that's just a note to keep in mind. All right. But let's go into it. So the completeness evaluation, let's look at that first. These include, as I already mentioned, the results of our scoring indicators. And they are organized in 5 climate journey steps or themes. So that means that they are organized in 5 tables throughout the report. And these tables have 3 main elements. If you can go to the next slide, please. So the first element is the OPCC scoring indicator along with the maximum score. So these are basically the different indicators that we have that we use to evaluate the data that you have reported. And if you click on them, you might have noticed that they are hyperlinked. And if you click on them, it will lead you to a scoring card document. There we go, the indicator cards, which include a full description of each of those indicators. So they include what they are evaluating, the relevant questions from the CDP questionnaire, as well as the scoring rationale, which is basically how we score that indicator depending on the different data reported. Then the next aspect is the relevant question and column numbers. So these are, self-explanatory, the question numbers and column numbers from the CDP questionnaire that we use to evaluate that specific indicator. So in case that you want to know maybe why you got a certain score one place, then you can check that what your data reported was to that question. And then we have your city score, which is where we have the score that your city received based on the data submission. And these scores are color-coded. So the lighter shades are including scores that are below 50% of the available score. Then the mid shading is between 50 and 80% of the score. And then the darker shaded area cells are those that are above 80% of the score. So if you only have limited time to go through this, perhaps it's good to focus on those areas that are more lightly shaded to know where there is greater scope for improvement. All right, so that was for the completeness evaluation. Now we go to the quality evaluation. And these, as I also mentioned earlier, these include the results of the data integrity diagnosis indicators. Now, I know that is a mouthful. In simpler words, it is just the results of our data quality checks. And what this section allows us to do is to evaluate the data reported against standards and logical verification criteria. So to make sure that they make logical sense. And then based on that, it allows us to flag any inputs that don't meet the OPCC data standards and flag those areas that might require corrections or improvements. So the table in this section is made up of 4 elements. The first one is the relevant questions that are being checked from the CDP cities questionnaire. So that's pretty simple, straightforward. Then the next section includes the indicator descriptions. So that is what is being evaluated. And something worth noting is that some of these indicators are checking only one data input, but others might be looking at several answers. To put an example, let's say you are reporting, 4 targets. Then the indicator that is looking at, let's say, the base year of your targets will be answering for all of those base years of those 4 targets rather than just one. So that's something worth noting. And then the next section is the result of the quality checks. And here there are 4 possible answers, let's say. So the first one is the please review. So this means that the response does not comply with the OPCC quality verification rules. And I will go a little bit more into detail about how to interpret these please reviews. Then the other option is not applicable or no data reported. So this just means that the indicator was not applicable for your city, or that the question perhaps was not responded. And then we have the checked, which means that there was data reported and the data that was reported was aligned with the OPCC quality verification rules. Now, going back to what those please review mean. These please reviews, they should not be interpreted as red flags or saying, oh, something is terribly wrong here. No, it is perfectly possible that the data you submitted is correct and it still has a please review. So we see the please reviews as a call for attention. So it means you should check this basically. And I have some examples for how this may play out. So let's say you have an inventory and the inventory boundary is smaller than the jurisdiction boundary. Then you will see that in your check, it says, please review. Now, of course, this doesn't mean that there is an error. It might be that the boundary of the inventory is indeed smaller than that of the jurisdiction. So in this case, the please review should be interpreted rather as bring attention to this. And in the future, it would be good that your jurisdiction could consider having an inventory that has a boundary that covers the full boundary of the city rather than a smaller boundary. So it is basically bringing attention to something where there is scope for improvement. And then another example, let's say that in your current population, you have a please review. Now, we have set certain limits to the numerical entries that will give a sort of green flag. And this is to be able to catch any cases where we had values that were reported that fell out completely outside of those limits. So again, it doesn't mean that the value you reported is wrong. It just means that it falls outside of the normal values. So for those of you that maybe have some experience with maths or physics, it would be an outlier, right? So yes, it might just be that your population of your city is a lot smaller or a lot larger than what we would expect, and that is okay. It just means that we flag it to be able to check those cases where actually there was a mistake in the reporting. Okay, I hope that made sense. And then the next and final aspect in the table is the OPCC comment. So this includes any additional comments that we have, which are why this question might be relevant for the evaluation that we do, what the information is used for, and any scoring implications. And that is basically what the GAPS reports include. And now we welcome you to, on the one hand, use the completeness evaluation, the tables, to improve your scoring in the future. And on the other hand, to identify any areas that might need correction through the quality evaluation, and go ahead and amend those in the CDP platform before the end of the month. So now I pass the word back to Björn or Andrea.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks a lot, Gara. Very thorough and very pedagogic explanation of the GAPS report. So, which is, as we said, new for this round and asked for by many. So now you see all the details behind the whole assessment process. So that's very interesting also, I think. So please put questions in the chat and we will pick them up. It's fine to write in Spanish. Andrea will help us to translate that to English or maybe some of the interpreters. But first, Gara, I have this please review might be the tricky one to a little bit understand because it can mean different things, as you said. It can be perfectly correct, or it can be something missing, or it's just as it is. I have an example from one of the Swedish cities. Is a smaller community of 10,000 inhabitants, and they project that their population will decrease in the future. So they have written a smaller number than what they are today. And so they got a please review, because the parameters that you have set is of course, we think everybody is increasing in this word. So that they go, but we put the right figures. So that's an example of figures are right, but so just, pay attention and so on, as you said.
Yes. Great example.
You cannot think of everything in this. So please also get back to us with feedback on what you think about this gap report, so we can improve it for the next round again. All right, I see that there's a lot of questions coming in. And Gara and Andrea, you are Spanish speaking, and we have an interpreter. Could you help us here with?
Let's do this. I'll read the questions in Spanish so that
Yeah.
we have the help of our interpreters when I'm speaking in Spanish, for you to listen to them in
Right. So
English channel. So
and everybody English speaking need to put on the interpretation English. Go to the English interpretation room. Thank you. Yes, go ahead.
Okay, the question is, do we have the GEI report, but only about gas consumption in the city? Can we report that as well?
All right, so I understand, Gara, maybe you also help me, that you have one fuel, one emission source to report from your city only. And of course, Gara, that's fine. You can report as little or as much as you want, and you report what you have, and that's it, of course.
Exactly. Maybe something worth mentioning here is that the CDP ICLEI track, we should only be reporting what we already have in our plans. I say I'm not part of a city, but what is already included in a plan. So it should be transparent to what is already happening. And if only one gas is included in the emissions inventory, or 2 or 3 or whatever, this should be reported as it is, and there is always the chance to include comments in the CDP platform to support the data that has been reported. If you have specific questions about how to report certain things, I know sometimes it can be a bit tricky to report certain areas like the inventories or the mitigation targets, then I encourage you to contact your CDP local contact, as they are very knowledgeable and can help you in how to report best.
Yeah, and there's also the guidelines for the CDP ICLEI track. There's a lot of guidelines and background material that you can find to handle this situation, which quite many cities are in. Thank you very much. Andrea, Larissa Arroyo have a question.
How should we interpret when in the column of quality check result we see numbers? For example, current population 5,864, which indicates the current population, and the projected shows 6,825. Where do we show that it's actually going in increase, or that's actually increasing?
Global channel, and I almost started talking in Spanish there. No problem. This is maybe I should have mentioned that in the presentation. There are certain cells in the report that they are not showing the results of our evaluation, but rather they are just showing the data that you have reported. So this is simply stating again what you have reported. There is nothing to check or to correct. If those values are correct, you can just leave them as they are.
All right, thank you very much. And if they are incorrect or the projection is changing, you go back to the questionnaire and change there. And that's fine and a good thing to do. We have a question from Carol Owen in Chile, Penelolen. Andrea, hola, muchas gracias. It says started.
Estoy buscando la pregunta de
Well,
Carol.
I'm actually trying to find
Mientras la
Carol's
encuentro,
question,
podemos pasar a otra
but
pregunta, y la
maybe we
busco.
can move on to another question while I find
I
it.
can read it. Hola, muchas gracias por la información. ¿Cómo podemos interpretar correctamente?
Well, the question is, how can we interpret correctly the please review?
Por favor, revisar sobre a que buscan, pongamos atención.
What exactly do you want us to review?
¿Existirán instancias de consultas
Will there
específicas?
be instances where there are specific
Yes,
questions?
that is an excellent question. So in the report, and I don't know if maybe, Andrea, you want to show again on the screen one of the slides where we can see the quality evaluation. It can be any of the slides, I think. So you will see that when you have a bit further down, they're the ones with yellow. So it will be a bit further down. Yeah, that one. That's perfect. So you will see that the ones that have please review, and I know that it's maybe a little bit small on the screen, but for example, let's take the Andrea, if you can highlight with your mouse the third, that one, yeah. That one, for example, it has a please review, and I can see on the leftmost column, it says 4.1 adaptation goals. So I know that this please review is connected to the information that you have reported in the question 4.1 of the questionnaire. So if you have any doubts, then you can go back and check what you reported in the question 4.1. And sometimes there are specific columns given in the OPCC comment. So for example, in that one that Andrea was showing, I can see that columns 3 and 5 are mentioned in the comment. So you know where specifically the information is coming from. Now, again, it doesn't mean that the information is wrong. Is just highlighted for you to confirm that what you reported is what you wanted to report.
Mm-hmm. Right, so there is where you can find the information. We have another question from Karen Farias, Lo Barnechea.
Before we move on, Carol is complementing. So are you looking for us to just improve on the data, or do you want us to just pay attention on the future just for that please review?
Depends, of course. Some things are quick fixes or easy fixes. Let's say that you made a mistake and you reported a year that is, I don't know, 1874. This is clearly a mistake. So then that is a quick fix, an easy fix that you can change in the moment. However, there are other types of changes that it's not a reporting error, but rather is an area for improvement. In those cases, most likely, you will not be able to change what you are reporting before the end of the month, because it's a whole process of changing and adapting, updating plans. This takes a long time, right? So in those cases, of course, we are not expecting a lot to change from the reporting, at least not in the near future.
Right. So, for example, if there is fault is on climate targets, if you don't have a climate target, then of course it will be difficult for the city council to adopt a climate target in October. But let's say that you have, please review when it comes to mitigation actions. That might be the case that you need to report at least one action, and then it will that hopefully you can do during this month. So it is adding on the small bits that you already have. So please review here is a possibility to add on things that you already have that you might not have time to do before, or etc. Right.
Perfecto. Muchas gracias por las respuestas.
Thank you very much for those responses. Okay, let's respond other questions in the chat. For example, there are some questions that haven't already responded directly in the chat, so I'm going to just move ahead to the next one. From Valentina de Marco. Is there a final average percentage, or is it divided by points?
I am not sure. I know exactly what the question refers to, but we in the completeness evaluation section, the scores are divided by disaggregated, so per indicator. And then in the beginning of the completeness evaluation section, there is a table where you find the aggregated scores, which are including the full scores. It is not an average score. It is just the added score for every one of your indicators, and from a maximum of 150 points. I hope that answers the question.
And Andrea and Gara, there is a question about what the abbreviation COL dot means, and it means column, but the column refers to the sub question. It's like this: in the questionnaire, you have one question, and then you have a lot of sub questions, and these are, from top and down. But if you go to the guide to the questionnaires, these sub questions are named column. They are in a table where each sub question has a column number. So you will need to go to the guide to the questionnaire to find out what the column 1 or column 3 says. More questions?
Gracias por eso. Tenemos una pregunta de Michelle.
Thank you so much for that. We have another question from Michelle Midanier from the city of Atlanta. It's actually in English, Bjorn, if you can read it over there.
Yeah, sure. For AFOLU, AFOLU, the sector, it's a sector in your emission inventory or for target. We have please review. We do have forest carbon credits now where we cannot double count. I believe we do not use carbon sinks in our inventory. Is this correct? Or how does WWF handle this? And I guess, yeah, it's a very good question, and maybe also a question for the CDP eClay track to handle. But Gara, could you maybe comment something?
Yes, currently in the inventory section, I don't believe that there is a place for reporting negative emissions, and this is currently not, let's say, recommended or encouraged by, for example, the Common Reporting Framework. However, for example, for mitigation targets, there is some scope for reporting negative or non-negative emissions, but carbon credits. So at this moment, we, let's say, we do not include those when we are doing our evaluation. We let's say, ignore negative emissions reported.
Right, but if you have a target that says climate neutrality, then you can indicate if there is carbon credits or carbon sinks within that. And if you do have a mitigation action on that is with carbon sinks, then it's fine to report that action and include the reduction or the sink itself as a metric tons carbon dioxide equivalents, so that there you can report for mitigation actions very clearly. Yeah. Let's go to Santa Elena in Ecuador. Andrea.
Sí, Gladys tiene un comentario de.
Yes, so there's a question from Gladys. It's just a comment regarding trying to strengthen their mitigation and adaptation management. They just have to consider a little bit more information. They hope to achieve that. Okay, thank you, Gladys, for the comment. There is another question from Constanza. In my report, there was a lot of information missing because we didn't have that data. What can I do in that case?
Well, you are in the perfect place to support and get some ideas and support from other cities that perhaps are a little bit farther ahead in this journey, in this climate journey. Of course, if you don't have the data, it's just what it is, and we encourage you to take part in our webinar series and to be able to perhaps have some inputs on how to get that data that you don't have at this moment.
Right, and also when you receive the final, the strategic feedback report, you can also you will get the result based on your reporting, and that one you can use to talk to the political level and to the administration and see, we need to have more data, we need to do more work on different areas according to what we are expected for a standard climate strategic work. So you can use the report to highlight need for new data, need for resources to work and improve, expand your work. Thank you.
Vale, tenemos la siguiente pregunta de Mayra.
Okay, next question from Mayra from La Molina, Peru. After quality evaluation, there's an item called Other Relevant Information. Regarding that, is that section to make corrections or improvements in the report? Can you explain a little bit further on that?
Yes, this is actually something that I didn't include in the presentation. It is a little table at the end of the quality evaluation, which is the same table for all participants. It is a fixed text, let's say, and it simply includes other questions that are important for the evaluations that we do. So it is simply bringing this to attention to you. So in case you want to make sure that that you have had a look again at the data that we are using for the evaluation in the OPCC, then you know that those are also relevant. It's simply that.
All right. We have a question from, now it disappeared. Let's see if I can find it again. Let's see. Right. If we find an error in the report or what do you say? Is it the gap report that you find an error? Right, then get in contact with your national office. That's fine. Thank you, Andrea, for that response. Or direct, if you don't have a national office, please use the OPCC help desk email address, and Gara and other people will help you overlooking that. Let's see. There's many questions. So That's brilliant. I think that's very beautiful that you have already started thinking and working on this. And I think that is the idea of the GAP report to give you a basis to improve your reporting and looking to what you can add on. Andrea, help me out. Maybe what do you want to take? Janet Alarcón, maybe?
Sí, exactamente. Y bueno, solo decir que la pregunta de Jack.
Yes, so there's a question by Jack that has been responded directly in the chat.
Ahora,
okay, so moving on to Janet's question. Janet writes from Montecristi, Ecuador. Okay, a very similar question to what we discussed before, whether when the city has very little actions related to climate and they have very little information. Because the processes have just been established. Can the city use data from academia, maybe universities, articles, scientific journals, and projects?
I think this would be a question best directed to CDP, since they know the specific details about what information should or should not be reported and where and how in a transparent manner that is representative of the city. So I would encourage you to contact your CDP representative for the region.
All right, thank you. And please refer, Andrea is also trying to respond to your questions in the chat. We have one question from Rachel in Nottingham City Council. How do we know which OPCC scoring criteria relate to all answers in that questions and some which relate to one answer only? Example, question 5.1. If 3 targets filled in which collectively cover all basic emissions rather than all covered in one target. So yeah, I understand there is a target for each parts of scope or sectors in the emission inventory. You have divided that. That's a bit tricky question.
I think if I understand correctly, it's how you are reporting your question 5.1 refers to your mitigation targets. So there might be a difference in interpretation between how you are reporting and how we are interpreting what you are reporting. So without looking at the specific data, it is hard for me to answer this question. I'm not sure I completely understand. So please welcome to contact us at the help desk if you believe that we are interpreting something incorrectly. And yes.
Yeah, very good. Get in contact with the help desk because we have not been able to think of all circumstances, and I'm sure that there will be some circumstances that will need to further improve the assessment. Another question is from Gustavo in the city of Zurich in Europe. We have a score as not calculated in question 5.1, and that is about targets, climate target. Does this mean that some information is missing? Yes, I think. Yeah, the base year or the target percentage itself or base year emissions or something like that. Yes.
Yes, maybe I can quickly mention here that we are aware that the way to report mitigation targets can be a little bit confusing, especially because there are different types of targets that you can report, whether it's fixed level targets or baseline targets. And intensity targets. So we have seen quite a lot of cases where cities maybe choose a type of target to report, but then the data that is being reported is referring to a different type of target. So this is definitely something worth checking, especially if it comes up with not calculated, then it probably means that there is something missing.
Yeah, and we have some questions here that I can say the following, that somebody's asking for global covenant of mayors reporting, and that's why we stress on the 31st of October, so that you are aligned with both OPCC and global covenant of mayors. The OPCC scoring criteria and assessment framework is different from the CDP ICLEI scoring criteria, right, Gara? That's different. We're looking to a little bit different things and so on, but
yes, that is correct. Maybe Andrea can help me to share the link to the assessment framework technical document from the OPCC or SAIMI, and we can share that in the chat for you to have a look at the detailed assessment framework that we use in the OPCC. If you want to have a look at the CDPs, I think it is public now. It wasn't public in the past. But yes, you can also find that online.
And I also think it's very important to say that the good thing, I think, as a previous city representative, is the strategic feedback report you get and all the information and recommendation and policy recommendation. That is the important and nice thing about this whole assessment, and that's really a good thing from WWF, I think. And we started to get more or less answer to all questions. We are very happy to continue answering questions if you direct them to the help desk email. And Andrea, could we have up the few last slide, please? So we will tie this webinar together and try to sum up. And if you go to the last here again, you can see in the lower part where you find information about the OPCC assessment framework that Gara has pushed on several times. There is the web page, and there is other information and inspiration. There is up to the right, there is webinars previously from this year, which where you can find more information on emission inventories and how to calculate reduction from mitigation actions. As something just shortly, tips from the coach, that is tips from me. Try, I think, above everything, I would say some cornerstones of your work is to try to see if you can match your emission inventory with your climate target, and the climate target with and the emissions inventory and the significant emission sources with actions, so that there is a match from emission inventory over targets to your plan and actions. And when it comes to adaptation, please do have a look into that. When you have identified one or several climate hazards, please match them with a relevant adaptation action. And this is some few cornerstones that if you consider this and work on this, you will have a good holistic climate plan and climate work. So with that, I would say thank you from me. And I know that Andrea, you have something as a final point on the agenda.
Yes, I do. Well, first to thank you everyone for being here. We will make sure to go over the chat and check if we answer all of your questions. If we didn't, we will try to answer them when we send the material. Then yes, what I have is a poll for you that we would love if you answer it. It is to know if you feel like if your understanding has improved about the GAPS report with this webinar, and if there is any other question that maybe we didn't answer, if you could also write it in there. This is, of course, for us to be able to improve what we give to you, our cities, and then also to make sure that we have all your questions answered. While you do that, I will just make the remark. This is the OPCC help desk email in screen, and you are very welcome to write to it. I think for the cities that got their GAPS report from my side as well, you have my email as well if you wish to answer, ask questions there. And I would say that as a general rule, from whoever you got your GAPS report, that is your national office, in case you're wondering. Yes, also I know that City is putting in the chat information, a video, in case you wonder how to do the amendment in the CDP eClay track. How does it actually work in the platform? There is a link in the chat that City wrote. Yes.
And while people answer, I can say some detail about how you actually do that. Go to your dashboard and scroll down, and it says amend. I want to amend, and push the amendment button, and then refresh the page. And when you have refreshed the page, there will be the option to again enter the questionnaire. The questionnaire will then be reopened for you. So there is a amendment button that you will try to find if you scroll down a little bit in your dashboard. Right.
Great. Well, thank you for all your comments as well in the chat. Very nice to hear. Should we say that if you've answered the poll, if you don't have any more questions, please, you're welcome to leave us. We were very happy to have you here. Yeah, otherwise, we still welcome others to give us more answers if that is.
Thank you very much for everybody for participating today, and the many questions, really brilliant. Thanks a lot. And good luck now in October, and see you back also in 2024.